Good afternoon. This is Kim Taylor at the April 18 Harbor Management Commission meeting. I'm here at the first floor conference room at Sullivan Independence Hall with Jack Hirschler, Bill Perugini, Doug Metchick, Jeff Warren, Betty Gabriel, and the Harbor Master, Brian LeClaire, on the phone. We have Eric Sunman, Don Hyman, Dave Henry, Pat Carroll, and Jeff Engborg. To get this meeting started, let's pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Let's see. So, 1, 2, 3. Okay. So the first item on the agenda is approval of the March minutes. Jack's moving to approve them. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Bill seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Great.
Aye.
Thank you. That's done. Okay. The chairman's report. A lot happened this month, and I will go slowly. Feel free to interrupt if you would like to. On March 27th, we got a deep emailed us and Race with questions related to our COP application for work at the Lower Wharf. Basically, the questions were how many piles will be installed, and where will the barge be berthed, and the location of that. The response from Race went out today, and basically there are 14 piles that will be installed to support the new pier, and they included some drawings which show basically the barge to be berthed right up against the pier. So Race said that was a pretty, it's pretty factual, pretty straightforward questions, and so they intends to act on the COP by the middle of May. So we should be hearing probably before our next meeting whether or not we have approval for that project. On March 28th, we received an email from Race with language requesting that language in the permit that was granted to the Sasko Hill development area, the pier at Kenzie Point. If you'll recall, the permit said no motorized vessel sail or auxiliary powered sailing vessel will be berthed, moored at, or otherwise secured to the floating end of that pier, the float at the end of the pier. And the language that was requested is, and I believe I forwarded that to all the commissioners, the change is, at no time shall any motorized vessel, fixed keel sailing vessel, or auxiliary powered fixed keel sailing vessel be berthed at, moored at, or otherwise secured to the float herein. This restriction shall not apply to human-powered vessels, i.e. rowboats, canoes, kayaks, paddleboards, or sail-powered vessels without fixed keel. And I think that it would be appropriate for us to discuss the request under new business. And so I've placed that item on the agenda under new business. On April 2nd and 3rd, I exchanged emails with the First Select Woman's Office and the state delegation, inviting those folks to come celebrate Pat Carroll's 100th birthday at Yee Yacht Yard. They both the state delegation and the First Select Woman's Office responded that they would love to attend and that they would bring proclamations. We had a wonderful celebration on Saturday. Probably 60 people, 50 people turned out. It was a good time, and today I received an email from Pat Carroll thanking us for organizing the event. He said in that email, Saturday, April 15th was a very special day for me as I was surrounded by a gathering of very special persons who rallied at Yee Yacht Yard to wish me happy birthday. To all, I say thank you from the bottom of my heart. To you, Madam Chair, a special thank you for informal chairing of the event sponsored by the Harbor Management Commission. To Harbor Master Brian LeClaire for his kind words. Brian loves Southport Harbor as much as this retired harbor master does. To Jeff Engborg and Travis Herman, our ever-helpful Pequot Yacht Club crew, thank you for docking the club's newest launch, the Patrick L. Carroll at Yee Yacht Yard. And to Betty Gabriel and Jeff Stedman for their participation in organizing the gathering and a tasty birthday cake and wonderful photographs. So if that should give you all a flavor, those of you who couldn't attend, of what a fun and inspiring, actually, event that was. On April 6th, Jeff Warren and Jeff Stedman and I met with some representatives of the Country Club of Fairfield to update them on the Army Corps' plans to dredge the harbor entrance. At this time, there's really, the Corps is getting ready to do the next step. They've decided that the environmental concerns have pretty much been taken care of, and they've called in their real estate division to begin to get organized to work with the Country Club to get an easement from the Country Club so that they can park their equipment on the Country Club property. So the Country Club folks had not been apprised of that progress from the Army Corps, so it seemed appropriate that we should reach out to them and let them know, because obviously we are all in this together, and we need their cooperation and their help to get the dredging done. On April 11th, did I skip? Yeah, I'm sorry, I skipped one. The March 28th email exchange with the fire chief and emergency manager, Dennis McCarthy. I asked him about the possibility of security cameras at Yee Yacht Yard, and whether or not he suggested that it would be appropriate for any cameras that we got down there to be part of the town-wide comprehensive security emergency management system. He suggested that that $16,000 is a fair amount of money for a project like that, and that he would okay our applying for what's called a port security grant, which is a grant that's given by FEMA and the Department of Homeland Security. The deadline for that grant is May 18th, and as my next item on the agenda says, or my last item on my report says, I've had one phone conference with Terry Brown, who is the town's grant coordinator, about what's involved in applying for this grant, and kind of what the next steps are. And I'd like to also talk about that under new business, because the commission has to make a decision about whether or not we are willing to pay for the cost share before we go forward with all the work that it will take to get the grant. So more about that under new business. And finally, on April 11th, the First Select Woman received an email from Stephen Delco, who is finding that spending time at the lower wharf has become unpleasant because of dogs and dog behavior. And she was wondering what our policy is on signs and who's allowed and what kinds of activities are allowed down there. I mentioned to her that we had inquired about how we would go about making rules and what kind of authority we have and what kinds of rules there are about making rules in town for various kinds of property. She forwarded that request on to the town attorney. It's my understanding that his response was, it's up to us, and we can kind of do what we need to do. And I think it would be appropriate for, at our next meeting, to take that up as an agenda item to begin to discuss what we do with undeveloped open space down there. You have a question, Bill?
Yeah, what were the specific issues cited relative to the dog behavior?
He doesn't have a dog, and he's finding it very unpleasant to be down there without a dog. I didn't see the email that he sent to him, but the first select woman reported to me that he was quite upset and finds it very unpleasant to be down there.
So this gentleman does not have a dog?
Correct.
And he feels it's uncomfortable?
He feels uncomfortable, that he's not welcome down there, that it's, yeah.
Because other people have dogs and he does not?
Apparently they let them off the leash, they don't clean up after them, there's a whole host of, and we know anecdotally that there's been a lot of discussion among folks who are down there about it's the beach where the dogs go to swim, except if you're a boater and you've got a dog swimming in front of you and you can't stop the boat, and it's a small place where a lot of people like to go, and not everybody always behaves.
Right. So it's beyond him just feeling not or out of place since he doesn't have a dog, but it's beyond that relative to dogs running around and dogs, I guess, relieving themselves or what have you. Is that part of the?
Yeah. So that's my long-winded report. Any questions? Any questions from commissioners on the phone?
This is Don. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I can just a word about dogs at Lower Wharf. People have been coming there with dogs, as you all probably know, for many years. Steve Galpin and myself were part of a group years back that tried to regulate and self-regulate the problems that people can have with dogs. I think it worked for a while, but apparently there's some changes that have come about. But I would just say it's good that this should become an agenda item because it's a multifaceted, highly emotional subject, and we need to look at all sides carefully.
Right, absolutely. And we're probably not going to solve the problems, although hopefully we'll have a couple of recommendations or courses of action to pursue with it just being considered at one meeting. But I agree with you.
It's complex.
It's very complex, very complex. Any other comments or questions? Harbor Master report, Mr. Leclerc.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I've got a number of items to report. First, moorings, they've all are virtually all installed in the harbor for the season, put back by Pequot. The new balls we ordered have just arrived, and they were being painted. I took a look at them last weekend. They will be deployed shortly. We have 2 people that have not completed the renewal process. All we need from them are their current registrations. For various reasons, they don't have them yet. They should be in any day now. I just followed up with them today, but they've paid, submitted everything but that, including the insurance for the vessels. Wait list stands at 83 vessels right now. We were able to take 3 vessels off the wait list and grant spots to them in the harbor so far this year. One is a small power boat on the west wall. The second is a 43-foot sailboat. We put that into the South Helix area, and we relocated another smaller 30-plus foot boat that was in the Helix area to a different row in the Helix area to make it more maneuverable for the 43-footer. And we have found a spot for a 33.5-foot Boston whaler. That owner had riparian rights and made an application under that. We were also able to, one of the vessels grew over the winter from 41 feet to 47 feet, a power vessel. We're able to accommodate that by flipping 2 boats along the mid and the west wall. So both of them will fit there just fine. We also expect at least 1, perhaps 2 additional spots because the Pequot Yacht Club has 2 open berths at its dock right now, which they've not offered to anyone. As soon as they do, that may free up space in the harbor off of a town mooring. If one of those boats comes out of the Helix area, I'll then have another vessel I can put into the Helix area. We attended on April 8th the christening of the Patrick L. Carroll at the Pequot Yacht Club. On April 12th, I went up to Hartford and visited with Mary Beth Hart. She is the new Harbor Master Coordinator, Supervisor with the DEEP. On April 15th, we had, as the chairwoman indicated, Pat Carroll's 100th birthday celebration at Yee Yacht Yard, which was a fun event, and the Patrick Carroll made its grand voyage from Pequot to the Yee Yacht Yard, and the police vessel also came in from South Benson and joined us. We're having a Flair Day next month. I've coordinated that. I don't have the exact date, but I've discussed it and got the approval from the Coast Guard and what we have to coordinate with New Haven and Long Island Sound Group in order to do that. So we'll have a day where folks can come down and dispose of their old flares, and if they'd like to shoot off one of their flares over the harbor to see what it's like to actually shoot whether it's a current or an old flare. I followed up with the town of Fairfield, Justin Cathcart, regarding the Perry Green mooring issue. We've offered to take control and management of the few moorings that the town has on Perry Green, since we control half of them anyways on Perry Green. I've still not heard a response back. And online mooring, I indicated at the mooring committee that it was about a week ago last Wednesday, so coming up on 2 weeks. There was an issue with online mooring, I noticed, when I tried to make assignments of some of the new slips. It was self-populating some of the fields that it shouldn't have been doing, and they confirmed that that was a problem. Haven't lost any data. It's all there, and I have backups anyways. But they asked that I not update anything on the website. I followed up with them today to see if I have the all clear, and she's still working with the tech people, to see if they can figure out why it was doing what it was doing. So, luckily it's happened now, but it's more of a techie thing that they said they can correct for us. So that is my report, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you. Any questions for the Harbor Master? Okay, no questions for the Harbor Master. We have one new application. It's the Perry Green bulkhead. Apparently Jeff, who unfortunately, Betty said this is about the second meeting that in the history of his attending meetings, he's not been able to make. Jeff has talked to the folks at DEEP about the Perry Green bulkhead. I don't know if any of you looked at the plans that I sent, but apparently DEEP likes the application for a COP to fix the wall at Perry Green. I know that the engineering department consulted with lots of groups in town. Jack, you went to a couple of the initial meetings. Any?
Just discussion about preserving the look and the visible areas of that bulkhead.
So they've filed their plans, and it's a COP application, which means that it will be acted on pretty quickly. I don't think that, and I believe it also means that the look is not going to be new. There's basically no changes. They're just repairing what's there.
Who pays for the permitting? The race does the permit application. Because it's going to be a lot of money. It was like 84 pages long.
Well, exactly. And in that case, the town filed that application.
Okay.
So the engineering department, and I believe the engineering department and the town got money from ARPA. And that's why it's possible, that's why they had the money to fix Perry Green.
Okay.
And so that, the cost of filing that. We paid for the race fees for filing our application for the work at the lower wharf. And that was about $20,000, $30,000, and that, for us, that becomes part of the cost share when we go out to get financing from the Connecticut Port Authority. That we will be able to go to the Connecticut Port Authority and say, the whole thing was going to cost $800,000, and part of the cost of filing for permission to get the work done is part of our cost share. So, but that's It's a lot of work that goes into those applications, a lot of work. Any other questions about Perry Green bulkhead? I thought maybe somebody from engineering would be here, but I guess they're chat with Jeff, so. Old business, Lower Wharf. Let's see, Lower Wharf, two things. Jack, you talked with Jeff, do you want to?
He just indicated that at Lower Wharf, we've now been assigned a new person at DEP who's taken over responsibility for that. Lisa, you said? I think you mentioned.
Yeah, she's here,
Right.
yeah.
And he's been waiting to have direct communications with her about any other information. He had suggested that we might send them a letter answering any additional information that they might need.
Right. He also indicated that unfortunately there will be no SHIP grants this year, which is what we were counting on to pay for the Lower Wharf work. So that postpones our opportunities to get any work done. Not that we could do anything much before 2024 anyway, because that's kind of the work season, but I don't know if we're talking calendar year or fiscal year, but in any event, in the near future, there are going to be no SHIP grants awarded, so we don't have. Hello? So that's not good news.
Madam Chair, if I have a question.
Yeah.
Maybe we want to inquire of Race. They talked about the permits, I believe. By the time of our next meeting, we'll have the permits to replace that.
Yeah.
Should we ask as part of that whether we can take down what is there, the fishing pier that is there, since it's going to be replaced? They're not going to save the upper structure and just put new pilings. They're going to take the whole thing down. We talked about it a few months ago.
We talked about it generally, yeah.
Yeah, because once they said, don't take anything down now because we'd rather have it there when we're getting the permits for doing it. Because if we're not going to be able to replace this until at least 2024, the way it is now, fishermen can't fish from the bulkhead.
Right.
Because it's in the way, and it's either the pilings or the entire dock. Do we want to consider, you may want to consider taking it down once we get the permits, something to put on our radar, cutting the pilings low. We have an extra buoy we can put there if necessary to keep vessels away from that area. And then at least the fishermen can fish from shore.
Yeah.
Many times of the day. Something that we have to think about.
To pay for that.
Who would pay for that?
I don't know how easy is that. An easy town thing for them just to take it down and
Yeah.
haul away with an excavator? I don't know.
Well, I guess it's a question worth asking. And if Jeff is going to be chatting with them about our application, it would make sense that he could say,
What if we take it down? We don't want to jeopardize rebuilding it, but we also, you've totally cut off public access to fishermen for at least 1 year if we leave it as it is right now.
Right, okay. All right.
It's potentially also a hazard to navigation if we have a storm. I mean,
The rest of it could just fall down.
Vessels, the harbor it could be a mess.
Well, 2024 is probably the earliest.
Right.
Not the date during which it will happen, so.
Depends when the grants come out in 2024. It may be too late to do it in 2024. We may be 2025.
Yeah.
But their filings they're not
looking good.
Yeah, they're looking really bad. The other item under Lower Wharf is that Betty forwarded to you the harbor the release, the draft that Don Hyman put together about the repair and replacement of the Lower Wharf. And I think he did an excellent job, and thank you, Don. And before we release it to the press and before we go to the first select woman and get her okay for the quote, which Don wrote for her in there, I wanted to be sure that we had the okay of the commissioners that it would be appropriate to release this.
We should probably take a look in view of the updated information about the lack of SHIP grants to make it clearer about the likely timing of even pursuing that.
There's language in the news release, I don't know if you've looked at it, that says something to the effect that repair work couldn't start on this project at the earliest sometime in 2024.
Yeah.
So we can address that, but I think the reason we developed the release was the fact that the absence of the pier, the damage to the pier, is conspicuous, and it kind of begs the public question, what's going on here? And we wanted to get ahead of that and say what we're doing. So the purpose of it, we had quote developed for Brenda because I think it helps her, it helps us if we if she supports this effort, and so I'm optimistic that the quote, which is rather benign, is something that she and her staff can live with, and will help us to continue to kind of bolster our image before the community and help us with funding efforts and other things like that. So the release is embedded in the agenda, and it was reviewed by Kim carefully, by Jeff Stedman, by Brian, and myself before you're seeing it now. So
I think Jack's right. I think maybe we ought to say.
Well, at least the way I printed it, shows up on the bottom of the first page. So it's the sentence, the paragraph that begins, the FHMC is working with town officials to seek a grant. I think we know that they're not entertaining a grant in probably calendar year 2023, and we should think about what the wording that's accurate that we could put there, that we are pursuing it. It's just not, it's not going to be.
I actually think in the second paragraph, I think it's the second paragraph. I'm sorry, it's the third paragraph.
Yeah.
It says that the platform will not be completed at the busy mouth of the harbor before spring of 2024 at the earliest.
Yeah.
And I think we should water that down further. I think even that is optimistic and potentially overpromising. I'd recommend we change it to say that would not be completed, well, I don't even know that we need it, actually. Or we might say, no sooner than sometime in 2024, no sooner than 2024.
we could insert the word optimistically or in there somewhere, so that it created more wiggle room for us. I certainly understand the need for wiggle room, but I think Kim, in one of the early discussions we had on this, felt it would be good to try to define how far out we were so people didn't think it was going to be, fixed this year.
But Don, I guess what we're saying is we may not be able to apply for a grant to get the funds to begin to start the project until sometime in calendar year 2024. So suggesting that we could get it done in early 2024 doesn't fit with that reality.
Yeah.
And that's what, we just need to think about how to be transparent about.
We could even say it would not be completed before 2024 or possibly 2025.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's no reason to overpromise in this case.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That would be that's an easy fix to make, possibly 2025. We could add that.
I think we need to add that, Don, because we don't, even if we get the funds in 2024, you can only do this kind of work in the wintertime. We have to go out to bid. We have to get a contractor. If we get the money in November of 2024 or January of 2025, it might even be 2026.
Well, we could change it to 25-26.
Everybody took a deep sigh when you said that.
I did hear that.
Okay. Well, I think we all agree that it needs to be less optimistic than it is now. And maybe end of 2025, winter of 2026,
Okay.
And I just want to reiterate, Don, the other place that needs to get a look is that sentence that says that we're working with town officials to seek a grant. Because we could work with the town officials, but there's no place to submit a grant to this year. So
yeah.
It's a little misleading to suggest that.
Well, we could say to seek a grant in 2024.
We do that.
Yeah.
In 2024, the town will be working with town officials to do that.
That sounds like, what are you doing this year? Nothing. It makes it sound like you didn't do anything.
Yeah.
we don't want to bite the hand that feeds us.
You say due to the unavailability of grant funding this year.
Unavailability of grant funding. Yeah, I like that.
The earliest, a grant would be,
Something
would be awarded would be 24, 25.
Yeah.
I like that. I appreciate the feedback. It's very helpful.
I want you to understand, I am completely supportive of doing this. I just think that we should be careful about the way we work.
Yeah.
No, we don't want to overpromise. And the information that you're sharing, of course, is new. We didn't know that when we created this particular version. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let me edit this and share another version with Kim tomorrow sometime. I'm in North Carolina right now, but I'll be back in Fairfield tomorrow afternoon, and it won't take me very long to make these edits, and I'll show it to you tomorrow night or the next morning, Kim.
Okay.
Can we use the commission, subject to these changes, to approve the?
Absolutely.
Of this? I mean,
Sure.
just fine tuning around some new information here. I think it'd be good to get this out.
So the rest of it stands. It's just the grant application and when construction might begin. That aspect has to change.
Right.
Right.
So everybody's comfortable with that? Don will take your comments into account. He'll run it by me. We'll get it to the first selectwoman, and and I'm speaking for you, Don, your original goal was to have it out by middle of May when folks are starting to use their boats and back and forth and see that.
That's right.
Yeah. And I think we can still do that. That's still, good.
Prior, before, early May would be good.
Well, our next meeting is the 16th, so,
Before the next meeting.
Before the next meeting. Okay. All right, I've got a lot of nods here in the room, Don, so that's great. Thank you so much. This is really good. Okay, sand management. Again, Jeff was going to report. Jack has some notes from Jeff.
I don't have any notes on that topic. So.
Okay. I have some notes.
Okay.
The Army Corps and DEEP both want to get together and at the sand, what are we calling it? The sand bar, the sand dune, to discuss what's going to be dredged and to reacquaint themselves with the site. And the Army Corps of Engineers has assigned its real estate division to begin to work with the country club to begin to get the paperwork and develop the relationship that they need to develop so that they can get the easement from the country club to park their equipment down at the country club. I'm not sure, the other outstanding issue was what was going to happen to the sand that was dredged. And I'm not sure that DEEP and the Army Corps have come to any kind of agreement about whether it would be deposited offshore or whether it would be used for beach nourishment. That's still up in the air. I know that the engineering department had mentioned that they would do a survey of our beaches to see if there were any beaches that needed nourishing, and I think that is still in the works, or is that process with all three of those groups is still, everybody's still talking about it. So, any questions, any thoughts? Okay, moving right along. Mooring Committee.
The Mooring Committee met on April 11th, and the Harbor Master has covered, I think, all of the topics that we discussed in that meeting. Kim talked in her report about the Homeland Security FEMA Port Security Grant, and we discussed that possibility at the meeting as well. And Bill reported at that meeting on the status of the Deputy Harbor Master search, and that is my report.
The online mooring fee increase?
I'm sorry, I meant to do that. The online mooring company let us know on April 3rd that they are updating their fee schedule effective July 1st. And that was attached, the updated fee schedule is attached to the agenda that Betty sent out for this meeting. Note for commissioners, the $6 fee that we've been paying for years since we began our relationship with Online Mooring. That's the per record fee annually paid, has gone from $6 to $7 starting in July. So the big effect financially on us would be during the renewal cycle when people are putting in their updated applications, and in the coming year it would be $7 versus $6 that would be charged for that. You'll recall that the people on the waiting list are now paying a $10 administrative fee rather than 0, and so that covers former $6 and now $7 fee that we're getting. Obviously, the fees that people pay for permits is also able to cover the $7 fee. There are also other increases for special software development support that we might need, but we're not anticipating needing any of that, so that should have no effect on us going forward. As in just a general comment, Online Mooring has worked very, very well for us. It's a solid record-keeping system. It's got good financial controls, and it's simplified the billing process considerably by taking credit card payments instead of the harbor master and Betty being saddled with checks as they were in the past. So that's my report on Online Mooring and my mooring committee report.
Any questions from commissioners? Super, thanks, Jack. Lower Wharf risk assessment. Eric, Sam, if you're there.
Okay. Excuse me. As far to my knowledge, we have not received the information that we need, and we are going to be scheduling a meeting with risk management, hopefully in the next couple of weeks before the next meeting, so that we can find out what they have reviewed and what their feedback is on the report that was given, I believe, to them. So until then, we don't have anything to present for today. But I do want to add, with regards to Lower Wharf, and now that there are more people fishing, we're going to be seeing more people fishing from Lower Wharf where they can. And so I think now there'll be kind of an increase of possibility of, any kind of fish hooks or tackle that might end up on the lawn, maybe, fishing line, etc. So if you have dogs or kids running around with bare feet, probably they're not going to realize that there's, a new risk involved. And I've also noticed that recently, and even up to today, that people are starting to fish off Perry Green. So I think that, having the pier shut down probably will increase other areas of people just trying to, be able to cast out into somewhere. And we'll probably start seeing that happen, more as the summer goes on.
Yeah.
So that's all I had to add to that.
Yeah.
Eric's right. There were 6, 7 kids out there this weekend.
But I mean, I'm sure there'll be, people are going to be casting. There's going to be, people running around, or there'll be somebody walking a dog and no one's paying attention. It's just going to be a new risk, you need to be aware of down there, et cetera.
Saturday they were at the metal dock.
Yeah.
They were at the metal dock. Yeah, that's a whole nother
issue. And, to the point regarding signage, I mean, obviously, it's our responsibility to kind of make people aware of things, but, who's going to really pay attention to if you're barefoot or if you've got dogs and there's now fish hooks or tackle that might somehow be, end up on the lawn because people aren't bringing their things out to the pier. I mean, that's going to become maybe a new thing that you got an extra thing you need to watch for when you're down there walking around.
Well, I guess one of the questions that we have to ultimately think about is how many signs. I mean, this is the property, the deed restrictions are it's supposed to be undeveloped open space. And how many signs do we want to put up, and how many things do we want to warn people about? You know.
I think in the, you know, at the end of the day, it's probably going to end up being some type of small signage right at the entrance that's going to have the list of what you got to be aware of. I mean, I'm just prematurely, you know, guessing that's what it's going to end up being to cover the bases for the town.
Yeah.
I would think. That's what I think, based on what, because you can't just put signs in 12 locations and, you know, they'll probably get knocked down, ripped down, someone will fall on them, and et cetera. I think it's probably going to be something as you walk in, you know, placed, and it's going to have to be approved by Historic District Commission, and, you know, the look and the height and the this and that probably is what it's going to end up being, like when you go to any other kind of open space. But I think in this particular case, it's probably going to be a smaller, lower level sign that you will see when you walk in, but it's going to address the important issues that will cover the liability for the town and protect people from, you know, to
each other.
Yeah.
Bill?
That's what I think.
So is fishing allowed from Perry Green and from other
I don't
parts
know.
Uh,
of the harbor?
I don't think, you know, off the top of my head, I think you're not allowed to fish off Perry Green. Does anyone remember the rules of that? It's listed somewhere. I think you're not allowed. But again, who enforces? Who's going to enforce?
Yeah.
You know?
This is Don. If I can interject, you're absolutely right. And there's a lot of precedent in other open space areas in Fairfield, certainly at Lake Mohegan. There's a long list of do's and don'ts, and even with that, of course, they have their share of conflict and problems around the Lake Mohegan area. Similar to the open space area that borders Ash Creek, there's a big sign with the do's and don'ts. And, you know, none of us like these things, but we have to cover ourselves.
Yeah.
And there'll have to be some thoughtful and some periodic enforcement to make that kind of regulation begin to work.
Right.
So while it's not clear, I guess the presumption is fishing is only allowed off the fishing pier on the lower wharf. Is that correct?
This doesn't say that. I mean, I'm missing the page before, but it looks like it's only by deed not allowed to have a marina.
Marina, yeah.
But it doesn't say anything about fishing from the Perry.
Yeah, at Perry Green. At the lower wharf, I believe the activities allowed are fishing, dog walking, no swimming, but...
At Perry Green, you're not going to have much fishing in the summer. Once the boats are there, you're way too close to be productive fishing.
Right.
So it's really the fishing you're going to see is where it always is. It's off of Lower Wharf. If you want to go anywhere fishing, that's where the fishermen go.
Of course, that's another argument to Deep about why we should be able to take down the pier once they give us the COP.
Correct, yeah.
Again, if we can find the money to do that. Yeah. Okay, more to come. Thanks, Eric. We'll look forward to hearing from you and hearing that you've gotten some information from the risk manager next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions for Eric before we move on? Okay, Deputy Harbor Master search. Because we will be talking about people, personnel, job qualifications, we need to go into an executive session. To do that, unfortunately, those of you on the phone will just hear silence. The executive session will occur here in the conference room. There will be no motions made during executive session. It will simply be discussion of the candidates and their qualifications. We will adjourn from the executive session. We will have a motion to present to the whole commission. Those of you on the phone will then participate in voting to approve a list of candidates that the committee will describe to us in this executive session. So the first step is at 5:17. Could I have a motion to go into executive session? Jack moves. Could I have a second?
Sure.
And Doug seconds. Those of you on the phone, we will be back as soon as we have concluded our discussion. You should just hear, I think you hear music.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Pat, it's Jeff. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. What's going on?
How are you?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
Good. Busy. I just had lunch at 4:15 and couldn't make it there, so I'm on the phone for the meeting.
Oh, good for you. Good for you. I called on, I guess I called Sunday afternoon to say hello to you. I didn't expect to find you there, but I thought maybe something was going on. I just wanted to call and personally say thank you to you and Travis for getting the PLC down to the yacht yard for the affair on Saturday. So I had a couple of my cousins visit on Saturday or on Sunday, and they went down into the yard, your yard, and had a couple of photographs taken. They were quite happy to see the boat, and they came down from Avon and West Hartford. So the word has got up to that part of the state that we've got a new launch at the Pequot Yacht Club.
Nice. Glad that they were able
So
to see it.
everything all right?
Yeah, everything's great. We're getting ready for a busy season. Getting a lot of maintenance done around the club and painting wise, and that's going good.
Is that right? Yeah. How about the North Anchor filled?
Oh, yes, sir. There's no boats here yet, but we've got 100%.
I mean, on paper, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I think everybody's looking forward to a good season, and I hope it plays out that way. When do the staff of instructors show up?
Say that again. I'm sorry, Pat. You went away that last second.
The junior sailing program. When do the instructors show up for the program?
The instructors come the second week in June, or second and a half week of June, and then the kids come the fourth week of June.
Okay. All right.
And then, but first we got to get commissioning out of the way. We got busy high school sailing going on now. That's going pretty good. The 4 schools here.
Okay. Did you get the Coasties in to take a look at the PLC?
No, because I finally got the MSO, manufacturer's certification or
you did?
statement of origin. So now I can finally get it registered. The guy's going to go tomorrow.
Good for you. Good for you. Well, things are well here. I've got a doctor's appointment tomorrow afternoon to have my toe looked at. I'm still taking the IV and antibiotics. That goes on for another 3 weeks. So,
wow.
Oh yeah, but it's an easy process. Gregory comes over at 9 every morning, and 20 or 25 minutes, and he's done. So good old Gregory, there's each one of the family takes on different responsibilities. And Gregory has been he's been my medicine man for quite some time. I guess with the police background, that kind of helps.
Sure. Well, that's good news. At least he's been around, and he's a very helpful guy.
Yeah. Well, sometimes executive sessions are short, and other times they take a long time.
Yep, that's for sure. But they come back. From what I've seen, when they're all done, they come right back. They come back and they want to talk to us.
Yeah, well, they have a little process I think they have to go through to make certain that it's done appropriately, and that Jeff Stedman, if you're listening, if Jeff will approve. They have to do things according to the statute, I think. It's the statute or the statute. I'm on the phone all day long, and my voice is rapidly. You can hardly hear me, I know.
Pat, this is Don Hyman. I'm just rejoining. Can you hear me? Okay.
Who is this?
Don Hyman from the commission. Don Hyman. I
wanted to make a comment about you. So you're first. You called.
I wanted to say happy birthday to you. I could not attend your event because I'm here. We had a big family gathering in Wilmington, North Carolina, where
how about that?
Number. Yeah, I have a large Southern family, and we're here for the week. So I was away doing Southern things, and we were at the beach today too, all day. Anyway, happy birthday! Yeah, Wrightsville Beach is a wonderful beach community here in North Carolina. It's a great
nice.
boating.
We had a family gathering here on Sunday, and we counted 31 people. So does that, what's your count?
About 16, so you're ahead of us.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess I can throw in another 9 great-grandchildren that kind of make the count a little lopsided, but we had a nice time. But Don, I did want to, and I am going to, commend first the commission and then you for doing what I've advocated for the last several years, to let the public know what this commission is doing, because I think it's very, very important that the public know. While I don't get out as much as I used to, I get a lot of phone calls, and many of the questions that are asked boil down to 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. What's going on at the lower wharf?
Sure.
So I think your article will answer that question for a lot of people.
Yeah, it really is a focal point of life in Fairfield for a good number of people.
Oh yes, there's no two ways about it. And you know, as the discussions occurred during the meeting, it's a complex situation down there. There is a group of dog lovers and dog walkers who almost, I hate to use the word dominate, but particularly in the morning hours, dominate the lower wharf. But the remaining part of the day, I've never seen a problem with respect to dogs. Maybe an occasional dog walker will come in. A couple of people are fishing, but I guess you have to sit down and really talk about it, because put yourself in. If you're a neighbor, you know, how would you see it and how would you feel about it? So.
Yeah. But as I mentioned, I got to know Steve Galpin years back.
Great guy.
And he was actually, I think, one of the people responsible for the Blessing of the Fleet program.
That's correct.
And you know, all these other things. And he and I got friendly because we both love walking dogs there.
Yep.
And Steve put together a whole list of all the dogs and dog owners, and
Yes, he did. He gave me a list.
Hello, everyone. We're back. We've had an executive session. No motions were made during that session. We discussed personnel issues solely, but we have a report from Mr. Perugini.
Yes, mentioned, we were very fortunate to have a successful search for the deputy harbor master position, and had a number of extremely well-qualified candidates by virtue of their skill mix, their training, their passion for the community in Southport Harbor, and their service to our community. The committee was aligned on 3 individuals to send to the governor. The first individual, or number 1, would be Mr. John Dean. Number 2 is Mr. Curtis Miller, and number 3 is Mr. Rob Powers.
Thank you. So the procedure is from here that the Harbor Management Commission recommends 3 names to the governor, specifying who our first choice is. And that would be John Dean, am I correct?
That is correct.
That would be the first candidate. We would write a letter to the governor recommending Mr. Dean and telling him that we also thought Mr. Miller and Mr. Powers were good candidates. And before we do that, I need a motion from the commissioners to okay that.
I'll go ahead and make the motion.
Doug moves to accept the recommendation of the nominating committee. Okay. And Jack seconds it? All in favor?
Discussion.
Any discussion?
Aye.
Thank you, Eric. Any discussion? Any questions? Don, are you still there?
Yes, I am. It all sounds good to me.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Great, okay. Thank you, everyone. Okay, the next item on our agenda is Cohen v. Deep. Mr. Stedman reported to us earlier that he had him deep, and a couple of legislators and a couple of people who represent the Harbor Management Commission Association met today. The head of Deep was unaware that of the court cases which called into question the Harbor Management Commission authority. The Deep folks wanted to talk among themselves to make a decision about what it means and whether or not they will support the legislation. Jeff asked the question whether or not that meant that there was no possibility of any legislation being passed this session, and they indicated that they thought that that was not the case, that there might be an opportunity to pass legislation that would clarify the questions about Harbor Management Commission authority raised by the two Cohen v. Deep decisions. So once again, we're on hold, and hopefully by the next meeting we'll have some answers, because I believe the legislative session comes to an end, if not next month, certainly in June. So hopefully those folks can iron out a solution. Any questions?
We're all set. Let's go.
Okay.
I did do that on purpose.
We, under new business, at our last meeting, literally half an hour before the meeting, the town received, the harbor master, thank you. The harbor master received a quote from the town for 2 security cameras down at Ye Yacht Yard. And we didn't discuss it because nobody really had a chance to take a look at it. The proposal went to the IT director, and it was for $16,000 and change. As I mentioned in my report, between then and now, we have been okayed to apply for a grant from the FEMA and the Homeland Security Department to cover the cost of the cameras. But they only the grant would only cover 75% of the cost. And applying for the grant, as my conversation with Terry Brown, the town's grant coordinator, it's a lot of work, and it's a fiddle. It's not just a lot of writing. It's registering in 3 or 4 different websites. There are times when you can access some of the websites and times that you can't. There are a whole lot of acronyms that you have to learn to use and incorporate in the grant. We certainly can do the work, and she would not be doing it alone. I would have to be involved, Jeff would be involved, and Jack has offered to help. But the part of the grant requirement is that the agency or government entity that's applying for the grant agrees to pick up their cost share. And so I really don't want to get involved, and I don't want to ask Jack or Jeff or Terry Brown to get involved if the commission wouldn't be willing to spend $4,000, which is approximately the cost share that somebody else would have to pick up, and that would be us. So I think we need to discuss that. We need to understand that it's not only the $4,000 a one-time to buy the equipment. I believe then there's $100 a month roughly.
Yeah, I get the harbor master. So how this started, we had this idea that perhaps we should look into cameras. There was an incident last year in the harbor, which we got on the yacht club camera, but only further up. And as you know, there was an incident with the fireboat in Fairfield this year at South Benson over the winter, and they have a full camera system down at South Benson. And something we started thinking about, that we have no cameras to watch any of the vessels at Ye Yacht Yard or in the harbor, or activity in the harbor. So I spoke to the police department, the Marine unit, about the cameras they have. And the cameras are not only in South Benson, we have them all over town. And it's one vendor. We have one vendor we use for this as a town. So I met with the IT director for the town. He came out there with one of his staff and the vendor, and we spent, a couple of hours at Ye Yacht Yard looking at the facilities, looking at the viewpoints, and they came up with this proposal that would have 2 cameras, one on the roof on a mast on the top of the old workshop, a second one at the top of the metal dinghy dock, looking in all different directions. This would be a private camera system, not for the members of the public to go look at. It would be for security and police purposes only. We would, if we wanted to put a public camera, that's very inexpensive, something we can do, tying it into the system, the mast and the Wi-Fi, and then using it through the town's website. They would help us do that, so members of the public can go on the camera and look at the harbor before you go out boating, kayaking, sailing, whatever. And we may even be able to put a wind system, a wind indicator system on that as well, so people at home can see what the winds are at Yee Yacht Yard and take a look at the flags and get a good idea what the conditions are like before they went there.
That's not part of this.
That's not part of this. That'd be a separate, probably a few $100 on top of that cost. The other cost is monthly. We do have electricity down there in the workshop, but we would need to have a Wi-Fi, or not a Wi-Fi, a internet connection of some type. And whatever that cost is per month to run internet to that building for making the system work. And this, we have to use this vendor if we're going to do it, if we're going to have the system. It would tie into the town system and the police department.
Right, we would be part of the
fire department monitoring, so that any of the firemen or the police can jump on this on their phones or laptops anytime as well to look at what's going on.
Is there town funding available for it?
No.
I'm curious as to
Start
why
there.
it wouldn't be on the town system now.
I have no idea why it isn't on the town.
I asked the police if they would pay for it. They said we didn't even pay for the one at South Benson we have tied into the Marine offices. That was paid for by the fire department. So then the chairwoman asked the fire chief, or I forget, one of us asked him, and they have no money in the budget for that this year, for more cameras and more.
Yeah, their fiscal 24 money is gone. So their fiscal year 25 is kind of what they're working on now. And, I
mean, I guess we can always, the option is you can wait a year and go into the budget for the next year, beginning July 1st, 2024 to 25, and ask the town to give us money, or ask the police or fire to put it in their budget.
I was wondering if, are we on the hook if this equipment that's sitting on a pole in our most exposed part of the harbor gets blown down in a storm? Do we have to pay to rebuy it again? Or is it covered by the town's insurance? I just was thinking.
That's a good question. I don't know.
Or vandalism. But the grant that we'd be applying for, would that be fiscal 24, 25?
Well, the deadline is May 18th.
For this year?
For this year. And they let you know by July 20-something.
It's a FEMA grant, right?
The what?
FEMA grant?
FEMA Homeland Security Grant.
Yeah.
And it covers, it's for port security, for all sorts of and they've paid for several cameras and security systems over in Bridgeport, as well as ones here in town. And we obviously are not a terrorist target, which is one of the reasons why port security grants are given. But we would frame the application as we're a crowded area. We're
a crowded area and a soft target given the assets sitting in that harbor.
Right. But it's complicated. The grant process itself is complicated, and you have to certify as part of the grant that you're willing to pick up the 25% share. And I don't think I want the town to devote their part-time grant coordinator to our effort if we're not willing to pick up the 25% plus the cost of internet plus the cost of electricity.
So electricity is offset.
Okay. Well,
I don't know who pays for that, but
that's all set? Okay.
Electricity.
Well, the internet cost.
I know who pays for it. The town pays for the electricity.
Right. And
It's going up and up.
I mean, we do have options. We have our mooring fee account, which is, we could easily afford to pay for this and avoid the grant process. We can wait and for fiscal 25 and put that in our budget and request the funds from the RTM at a time when we're also going to be requesting funds for the lower wharf. so, but, Jeff?
I hate to be negative, but this to me seems like a solution in search of a problem. I think generally speaking, security cameras are put in areas that are high crime, where there's a real problem that you need to solve. I just don't see that here. I mean, it's nice to have, but, and the reason I think I'm a little bit negative is I think some of the unforeseen future expenses could really be a problem, like you're saying about vandalism or it stops working or whatever. Once we approve this, then we're on the hook forever to maintain this thing.
Right.
And so on.
Right.
And if there was an ongoing problem with boats being vandalized or something like that, I could kind of see it, but it just seems like something that's nice to have, but doesn't really solve an urgent problem. So.
The idea that you had, which I think voters would be interested in.
I know where you're going, that's the same thing.
And
we could
for
do that
a fraction of
I was thinking the same thing, Jeff.
$15,000, we could buy this equipment with the anemometer on it and put it on that pole and pay for the internet access for that to be on the town website. I suspect the interest among voters and other users of the area would be greater about that than the enhanced security that we get for $16,000 probably.
Right.
I mean, I don't know what it would cost, but it's probably...
The price surprised me,
$2,000.
frankly. That's how we started the discussion, is having a camera for voters to look at,
Right, that's where it began. And I think that voters would support that. I mean, I think that knowing before you get to the harbor...
And cameras are pretty darn good.
Right, but we don't have a price for that, but I think we're operating with this assumption that we're talking about a tiny fraction of the $16,000 to put one of those kind of cameras on the pole.
If what I understood from the vendor, less than $1,000 to do that.
Bill, you had a question?
You guys are spot on. So I'm part of the Coast Guard flotilla at South Benson, and so we had a camera there, and so we had it directed out towards the sound, and so I think we even had the images posted on the website, and so we had the same issue. We had a problem with the cameras, and it became cost prohibitive. So it wasn't really for security, but for voters to kind of check out the weather conditions. So I think that's the true.
So what happened to the camera?
They just stopped working, and so it was kind of cost prohibitive.
So you took it down, and that was...
the camera's still up there, but
There's nothing, it's not doing anything. Don, Eric, any thoughts?
I would only say that I think while it's not as local as what's being discussed, the weather information, wind speed, so forth, that's quite available now, as we all know.
That's true, too. There's a station down that way, isn't there? Down in Southport, isn't there a weather station? If you go to...
Well, if you go to Wind Finder, it's Bluff Point is the one to look at.
I mean, I think most people that are sailing are knowing what the winds are before they go out of Southport Harbor.
Yeah. I think so, too. Should
anyway.
You're right.
My feeling is from a security or crime or other things, it really leans to the jurisdiction of police and fire and what they're doing, and I would think that it would be theirs to fund and manage, not the Harbor Management Commission's. As it relates to one potentially that would enhance Southport experience or public weather or something, it may be worth getting a cost and understanding what that system is,
right,
and what the cost of acquiring, installing, and maintaining it is to make that decision. There's certainly available information now on all of our devices, but this might be more local and of interest to people. So to the extent that people want to research it, maybe worth figuring that out.
Okay. Is there anybody who thinks we should proceed with the camera and the grant, the port security grant?
This is Eric. I would consider it because I think we've needed down there for a long time. And, I remember speaking with former police chief Gary McNamara years ago about getting them down there. And, it's important because there's going to be a time where you're going to you would have wished you've had it. I've been down to Yacht Yard in the early mornings a couple years ago, and there was a campfire still going in the middle of the parking lot, nobody around. And, to me, it's an important thing. It's a public area. You've got a boat ramp. you kind of want to monitor what's going on at that boat ramp at all kinds of hours. You know, so for me, you know, I'm surprised we haven't had it 10 years ago. So I would support it. I would support it now is what I would do. Because you can't guarantee what's going to happen in the future regarding, you know, another department requesting funds. It'll never happen. And I think it's an important place to have cameras. And so, yeah, $16,000 sounds like a lot of money, but I think you'd want to have some peace of mind and the ability to act quickly if something was going on down there, because there's not a lot of people that are watching things at night down there. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. So maybe what we do is take up Doug's suggestion and ask the police and the fire department if they wouldn't, I mean,
Well, they're also capable of applying for that same grant.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
So the question for that, I mean, the important reasons that were just put on the phone or over the speaker, the question should be asked to them of, you know, or maybe it should be brought to their attention as to why we think it's important.
Yeah.
The police like the idea, I know, in conversation.
Oh, and so did the fire chief. He liked the idea too.
They have a fire vessel there and they like to keep an eye on it.
Right. But that would be fiscal year 25.
Yeah, correct.
So we're
You know, my concern, and I've heard it come up in other Harbor Management Commission meetings, is where the boundaries are to what the commission's authority is and isn't. And this is not a law enforcement or security aspect of you know, the local community. And so I think that the concerns are real. I just think it falls outside what the Harbor Management Commission's authority is.
Well, I guess conceivably, I mean, I understand the point, but, you know, safe, responsible enjoyment of the harbor, I think the crux of what Eric shared were really security issues.
Right.
Law enforcement issues.
Right.
People doing things they shouldn't do.
Right.
It kind of falls within our purview because it's a safe, responsible enjoyment of the harbor, but I think it really, what Eric suggests really speaks to law enforcement and emergency management. And correct me if I'm mischaracterizing your sentiments, Eric, but I think to your point, that's what it really speaks to.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it gets to be a wild place especially on weekends with, you know, paddle boarders, and kayakers. Everybody, I mean, it's a crazy place. And then people trying to launch boats, and then people coming in. You know, if something were to happen, yes, I mean, is someone watching every second? No. But you kind of want to have, I think, some kind of ability to see what's going on down there. You know, again, I had thought of someone had raised a good idea as to, you know, when it comes to, well, I'm getting off topic, so I'll stop there. But I just think that place needs some eyes, and it's needed it a long time. And you know, who enforces it or where it's coming from. You know, someone needs to take responsibility for that property, whether it's us or the police department, fire department, whoever it is. It needs to be addressed.
Yeah, the only comment that I would make is what's being proposed, though, is a private network that's not being monitored in real time. So it would be for somebody to go in afterward and see what occurred.
No, this would be part of the police, this would be part of the town's consolidated network, so that the fire chief and the police
for them to monitor
could monitor. We would have no.
South Jensen Marina would monitor this, right? And also police department.
Police headquarters, I suppose the commission may be able to.
Right.
At least one camera.
I mean, I guess the other thought that has occurred to me, you know, when thinking about this is we put it on recreation department facilities. Why hasn't the rec department?
Right. I think it's Jeff's point. It's just that this is an issue.
Yeah.
I mean, notwithstanding the fire in the parking lot, it's just not. The grant is a tricky thing to do because the main purpose is to prevent the most serious
Right.
And we don't even have much in the way of local.
Yeah,
The argument to make is to go for the grant.
right.
And the other thing I would argue is that the camera proposal for $16,000, they're not even rotating cameras, to Eric's point. It's not going to necessarily capture the things occurring. There are going to be 2 cameras.
They're 360-degree cameras.
Oh, they can go through?
They are, they are in 360-degree
Oh,
cameras.
okay.
And then I asked that same question, I was curious. He said, if you don't want to look at the houses on the road, what you're going to see on your screens, you tell us what degrees, like.
And they can cut that,
What?
okay. I misunderstood. I thought it was literally going to be aimed at it.
Otherwise, you have multiple monitors for the same.
I don't think you can have it.
Maybe we could have the Harbor Commission just.
No, right. So there's multiple camera heads on the unit that we, right, we don't want to be looking at
Added
houses.
security guard would be a good idea, and that's the end of it. That's our official recommendation.
For those of you who
Was that a text?
might not have heard, Jeff Warren just suggested that the Harbor Commission recommend to the Fire and Police Department that we think it would be a good idea for them to consider cameras down there, and then let them proceed with whatever it is.
And make them aware of the grant.
Yeah, and let them, yeah, I like that, thank you.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, so why don't we do that? And I can, I will get back to the fire chief, since he was the one that okayed our application, and I will just let him know that we think it's a good idea, but probably not for us, and let them work on it with the police department. Okay? We've got a lot of nodding heads here in the room. Eric, you good with that?
Yeah, that sounds great. Great idea, Jeff.
Super. Excellent. Good. Phew, that frees up some time. Thank you.
So your camera at the Coast Guard doesn't work, but the wind direction equipment does, because wind finder, I just checked it right now,
good.
it's 15 knots,
Yeah.
20. Yeah,
And in fairness,
that's
there were
working.
No, that's from 1919.
Yeah.
No, I checked with the clock, it's right now.
That's what they do for
And a lot of people were disappointed that it didn't, a lot of people
Yeah.
tuning into that.
I look at that all the
To
time.
check out what was going
Sure.
on out there, but
Sure.
again, same sort of issue. There was an issue with the cameras and maintaining it, and we just opted not to.
Okay. All right, good to know. Thank you, everyone. I'm glad. I was supposed to have a meeting with Terry Brown tomorrow morning. She'll be very happy that she has one less grant that she has to work on, as will I. So, next, under old business, we're in new business. The revised language to condition 5 of the permit granted for the pier at Sasko Hill Road.
Madam Chairman, I'm going to jump in my car and then participate, but if I could just go first briefly, I have a red line I did between the two, between what was approved previously and what Race is now asking for.
Okay,
So what was approved were, at no time shall any 1, motorized vessel, 2, sailing vessel, or 3, auxiliary powered sailing vessel. So you had motorized vessel, sailing vessel of any type, and auxiliary powered sailing vessel, be berthed at, moored at, or otherwise secured to the float. And for those of you that may know, an auxiliary powered sailing vessel is a sailboat with an engine on it. And that's, so there were no sailboats, no motor power boats, and no sailboats with engines.
And the fixed keel stuff was not present.
No fixed
No
keel. Now,
fixed
the language that came in now, they were fine with the motorized vessel. For the auxiliary power sailing vessel, they added the word in fixed keel to their proposal for Race. So only auxiliary powered fixed keel sailing vessels. And then for sailing vessels, they added the word fixed keel. So while they do note that we understand asking for a modification to allow motorized vessels would be difficult, we therefore want to focus on sail-powered vessels without fixed keels.
They mean sailboats, not sail-power vessels.
Correct.
They mean
Right.
Sailboat.
sailing vessels.
Because I can just tell you, the way this is written now, a sail-powered vessel without fixed keels and auxiliary-powered fixed keel vessels, I mean, I can put a Catalina 22, an O'Day 22 with an engine, because those are swing keels, or even a Catalina 25 water ballast with a centerboard in there, because those are not fixed keel vessels. There's a lot of boats.
Right. I was interpreting what they mean here is that they mean, the end of this should say, or sailing vessels without motors or fixed keels, because I thought our understanding was there were going to be no motors.
Right.
And
Right.
they're proposing that there could be sailboats that have swing keels, raising keels, that could sit in the mud, and that's flow tide, all that over there, and there would be no motors, but that's not clear what they proposed
Right.
here, that there
You understand,
should be no motors.
That's the distinction that,
Right, and with their language of sail power vessels is not the way the Coast Guard refers to them. They're either power vessels or motorized vessels, or they're sailing vessels or auxiliary sailing. There's no such thing as a sail power vessel.
Right.
So it's confusing, and I think, to be clear, I guess I would propose that the end of this say, leave their language and say, or sailing vessels without motors or fixed keels. And then they can put a sailboat with no motor at all that has a lifting
Centerboard.
keel that sits in the mud on that dock.
Say that one more time, sailing vessels without,
It's the last paragraph they're proposing, the last part of the paragraph. It says canoes, kayaks, paddle boards, et cetera, or, and I'm proposing it say, sailing vessels without motors or fixed keels. It may not be what they're looking for, but if they're looking to put motors on there, I thought we had talked about the fact that we didn't want to disturb the shellfish, and it's not good to have motors.
and they
We don't
recognize,
want motors, I mean, that's the.
well, they
We don't want
recognize
motors,
that too.
and we don't want anything that's gonna drag
In the mud.
in the mud to drag up. That's all shellfish beds, some of it leased to commercial guys and some of it from our own shellfish commission out there.
And that's why we had no sail vessels, because you bring in an Ideal 18 with its big old keel,
Rip up, right?
and this would allow it. Under the proposal, we can, do you want to, that's your decision, do you want to agree to these changes at all?
Right,
Because this would allow someone with a sailboat, whether it's a swing keel, centerboard, dagger board, or a fixed keel Ideal 18 with no engine, as you know, to come right up there anytime they want it.
right.
No, it says no,
Fixed keel
no fixed keel sailing vessel, so that would not be allowed.
So I'm sorry, so no
So that would be the ideal.
fixed keel.
That
no
would
fixed
be the
keel.
ideal.
So, but the boats that have the raising or
Centerboards.
centerboards, they could leave it down and drag it through the shellfish bed.
Catalina 22s have a draw 2.5, here's an example, 2.5 feet with the swing keel down, which weighs 550 pounds of lead. That goes down to about 5.5 feet. So you can come in with 550 pound swing keel. And Catalina 25s have a similar, you can have a swing keel Catalina 25 as well, 25 footers with a keel that goes down, that draws 5.5 feet. That's,
But with no
500 plus
motor on it.
Mind you, have to put an engine on it. If you're gonna sail off of there, you can, if you wanted to, sail off, yeah.
The keel's not stable, the keel sort of,
Well, it's a swing keel, so a swing keel vessel, there's a pivot point under the mast usually, where the keel then comes down this way under the boat. It's stable in the sense that it's 500 pounds hanging straight down, so if you plowed into something, it would go boom, but that's a heavy boom. It's not like it's a fiberglass little
Sure.
centerboard, even that's gonna do damage.
Even that's
Fiberglass
gonna-
and
centerboard.
the trajectory, I guess?
It just goes straight down.
Got it.
And remember, that keeps the boat from tipping over, so that's the whole point, is to get a lot of weight low on a sailboat. And there's lots of boats, that may have those kind of days. You
Yeah.
have them on their 22s, you have Pearsons, so there's
So they were looking to, at minimum, if I'm reading this right, I think what they're trying to say is they want to be able to have sailboats that have keels that can be raised to be on this dock, to use this dock.
Well, Chris
auxiliary
Russo,
powered sailboats.
when he was here,
They're looking for auxiliary powered sailboats
It says-
that have keels that could be raised
Right.
correct.
to be on this.
And I don't,
Right.
You
it's
can have
not
a
clear that,
50-foot
yeah,
Hinkley with,
that,
Right.
I'm proposing that is not what we should be approving. That, it should say, or sailing powered vessels without motors or fixed keels.
so we would say no motorized vessel,
Right.
no
keel.
fixed keel sailing vessel, or sailing vessels without fixed keels or motors.
I think it's without fixed keels and motors.
And motors, yeah.
People do put outboard motors on some Ideal 18s. Not us, but others do.
Yeah.
It's out because it's a fixed.
Mr.
keel
Levitt had his former boat was that 50-foot Hinkley, remember, with the hydraulic keel, so
Yeah.
technically that would be allowed there.
That's
Exactly.
what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, yeah, we could restructure the whole thing, or just leaving it the way they have it, you could just change that last clause to say, or sailing vessels without motors or fixed keels.
but isn't that?
You're saying the last clause, you mean the very end of that sentence?
That's right.
Or
Right.
sail powered vessels.
Or, no,
without
don't
fixed-
say powered, because that's not, a sailing vessel. There's no such thing as a sail-powered vessel.
Or sailing
It's saying-
vessels without fixed keels and,
Chuck, I'm lost me, only because
The way it is right now.
the beginning of that
Yeah,
sentence,
I'll
it
have
says
You have the
this
old way, the way it is now.
restriction shall not apply to.
Oh, you've got it right there.
Yeah.
So what's the difference?
yeah, no, so what they're saying is rowboats, canoes, and kayaks can be on that float.
Right,
I, you know what, I didn't read it carefully, you're right, so it should be excluding that sailing powered vessel, they should, maybe you're
But
right.
so the point is, can a sunfish be on the float? Will a sunfish without an engine on it?
Yes, right, it's got
So-
no keel.
I mean,
It's got-
that's
it's
what
got a
they're,
dagger board
I
that
think
goes down
that's
a few
the
feet.
relief they're looking for.
they're looking for
So then,
sunfish,
so it would
420s.
be a sailing vessel without a fixed keel and motor.
Yeah,
Sailing vessel without a.
With neither, with neither.
With neither, sure,
Yeah.
same, yeah, in other words, it needs the sum of those, it needs
Right.
both of those.
so it would be two restrictions, three restrictions, no motorized vessel,
Right,
no fixed keel sailing vessel, and no sailing vessel,
no auxiliary again, we still have auxiliary.
Line one number, the recording has started.
Sail, you don't want auxiliary sailing vessel.
no, number three makes no sense,
What do you
right?
mean?
It would just be no auxiliary powered sailing vessel is number 3.
Right, it's not.
And then on the very last sentence,
Well, I think Kim is right. If we have to move that thing about vessels without fixed keels, with motors are not allowed either.
that's what I'm saying, so we
Yeah.
need to address both parts. On
Right.
number
Right.
3, it would so it's no motorized vessel, no sailing vessel, or no fixed keel sailing vessel, no auxiliary powered fixed keel sailing vessel. And on the very last few words, was say, or sail powered vessels with neither fixed keel or auxiliary power.
But this sentence, as Betty pointed, it says this restriction shall not apply to.
That's what we're saying. So a sunfish is okay. A sunfish would
So
be
you're
a sailing vessel without a fixed keel or a motor, with neither a fixed keel or a motor.
Okay.
I mean, the lawyers could come up with language, but that would be the point of it, right? A windsurfer,
Right,
a Hobie cat,
Without a fixed keel or
Right.
a motor. Without a motor, right?
could be a sail-powered vessel with neither a fixed keel or a motor.
so the last sentence, the restriction shall not apply to human-powered vessels, rowboats, canoes, kayaks, paddle boards,
Period.
period. Right, so the,
Because they're not human powered. Once we introduce this,
Well, the oars so the sentence would be, the restriction shall not apply to human-powered vessels,
I think
oars.
we should put this kind of sailboat up in the top and say what is not allowed.
yeah, at no
We should
time,
have a 4. And
right, this is number 4.
is a sailing vessel without a fixed keel, but with a motor is not allowed.
Right, without motors or fixed.
Say that again?
The fourth case, what at no time shall, 3 things currently listed, I think there should be a 4th one, which is a sailing vessel without a fixed keel, but with a motor
Well-
is not allowed.
Without a fixed keel,
But
and
with
with-
a
but with a
motor is not allowed.
right,
And that way we're being crystal clear of what's at no time.
Well, I guess my point would be, number 3 should be any type of sailing vessel with a motor. Fixed keel
Okay.
or otherwise.
any
They could do that.
sailboat,
They're wanting to introduce fixed keel and there's no reason for it on number
any
3.
sailboat,
But maybe saying,
My point, if we're okay with rowboats, canoes, and kayaks and paddleboards,
Yeah.
we should be okay with sunfishes and windsurfers.
Yeah.
That's my view.
yep, no question.
So then so that shouldn't be as a restriction in number 4. A sunfish shouldn't be number 4 because the first sentence is at no time what's allowed. What's not allowed is power boats, motorized vessels, fixed keel sailing vessels, right? Or-
Auxiliary powered boats are understood to be
I would think like a sailboat with a, yeah.
built-in motor, right? It's not, usually I don't think of an outboard as being auxiliary powered.
I would think it would be.
It is.
Is it considered,
A sailboat with an outboard on it?
I guess it has the power to.
I mean,
Auxiliary usually means a built-in motor, internal motor.
Well, why don't we say it? Inboard or outboard?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you know.
I don't think, by the way, it usually means an inboard. I think in the sailing maritime terms, an auxiliary is a second
It just means
form.
a motorized.
That's what
The
I-
sailboat's
that's what I
primary
was thinking,
form
but I'm
and
not.
function is to sail, so the auxiliary would just be
Whatever,
backup.
trolling engine, whatever it is, right? I mean, I would think, you know.
So I guess my commentary on it would be, if we could work to get the first three right.
Right.
We also should work to get that second sentence to accommodate the inclusion of thinking a sunfish sailboat or a windsurfer, which is, I believe, the spirit of what the second sentence is.
A sailing vessel without fixed keels, but also without a motor.
Correct.
Right.
Because we want no motors or anything.
We want no motors, and we don't want anything that's gonna
Right.
drag deep.
Right, because you have supported the Shellfish Commission.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I don't know. I forwarded this to the Shellfish Commission and to, Tim Bishop, and, I have not heard back.
No, it's the jet boat wouldn't drag, but we don't want any motors.
Correct.
right? So no jet skis, no jet boats. no,
Correct.
You know, but you
So,
could leave
so
some on
your
board.
suggestion is to, in that first
The
line,
objection
to
the
take out
motors
the
is
fixed
just
keel
because it's
in
gonna
number
disturb
three,
the oyster beds, is that?
is what you were saying.
Okay, so you want a 9-foot
Right.
dinghy with a little tiny motor, okay.
So if we took out fixed keel out of number three, it just says auxiliary powered sailing vessels. And we're believing that auxiliary power is whether it's an outboard, an electric motor.
That would be the Catalina 22,
Right.
the center board and a 5-horse outboard on the back of it. That's what number 3 would be, or 15-horse outboard. but whatever.
Okay,
Right.
and then,
And then at the bottom, we're saying,
Or sail-powered vessels with, I think we were saying neither fixed keels
or motors.
or motors.
is the commission gonna send a draft, paragraph that it would consider approving to the Shellfish Commission and conservation before it,
I think we
approves it?
should, because I know they discussed it at their meeting. So we can send this suggestion to the Shellfish Commission, who have the beds there, and the Conservation Department, and tell them this is what we came up with, what do they think?
And why, right.
Anybody on the phone still? Don? Eric?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
Madam
I'm following
Chairman.
you.
Yes,
I'm here.
What do you think?
Yeah, that sounds
No
good.
motors?
No motors.
Yeah, keep it simple. No motors,
Yeah, keep it simple.
Nope.
Or fixed keel.
no motors.
You could have a
Yep.
very large lifting keel boat, sailboat, on that dock.
You could have a
As long-
racing sled on that dock.
A racing,
Yeah.
Keel and a
right,
motor if you want.
right, exactly. Yeah, a racing boat with a lifting keel could sit on that dock as long as it doesn't have a motor.
Is that common?
Who knows?
But there's,
Having
Well,
new waterfront yachts.
I used to run a boat builder, and we had customers coming to us to build custom boats all the time,
Yeah.
to find a way to get into a dock in the Bahamas or whatever, so that I want to sail to the Bahamas and then in 3 feet of water. So there's creative ways to get around it.
Once they build that dock, they'll never be able to enforce that though,
Well, that's it.
because people will bring their inflatables and a little outboard on it, and who's gonna enforce it?
Who's gonna enforce it?
So,
It's gonna be in the BE.
But at least if there's language that says it's not okay,
Right.
then theoretically, the harbor master could.
Yeah, you could.
And Mother Nature's going to enforce it there too.
Say what?
I think with the waves in the southwest wind,
Yeah,
Mother
yeah,
Nature's going to do her
hopefully.
part.
But I think we need to be sure that what we put down is something that we can live with. And Brian is there at the time when he needs to be there. So what do we?
Did we have a sense that it's okay if there were no motors? I thought we were okay with it.
Who they?
Shellfish Commission.
Oh, yeah, the Shellfish Commission does not want any gas. They were very worried when we took the tour
Right.
with the deep people. They were very concerned about gas from motors leaking into their beds. Very,
I
very
think it's even
concerned.
more than that. I mean, an electric motor would still throw a propulsion screw at the beds if it was down low torque. So I think it's more fuel, but
Yeah. Well, they're very unhappy with any with all of this, because they're concerned, for example, there's some pilings that need to be dug up. They're concerned that there's bacteria and stuff in those old pilings that's gonna infect their shellfish bed. So they're not happy about any of this. But.
Okay. Can we just read it to make sure we know what we have here?
Betty, do you who's come?
I do not have it.
Okay, so Jack, do you wanna read what you have?
I have the beginning of it, in the first line. At no time shall any 1, motorized vessel, 2, fixed keel sailing vessel, or 3, auxiliary powered, removing the words fixed keel, sailing vessel be berthed at. And that continues on. In the sentence it says, this restriction shall not apply to human-powered vessels, rowboats, canoes, kayaks, paddleboards, etc., or, and help me out here, sailing vessels with neither fixed keel
or auxiliary power.
With neither what?
I would say sailing vessels with neither a fixed keel or auxiliary power.
Okay, either a fixed keel or...
So what it's going to come down to is whether you're okay with someone having a boat with no engine and no fixed keel of whatever size going there.
Should you qualify?
But a rowboat or a canoe is already there, is already in
Right,
the
the idea though, right, but the idea I know with the shellfish, something to think about is those are all surface floating boats. Yes, it's stirring up the oyster beds on the bottom.
Yeah, well, but they have paddle boards and kayaks and other things that.
Right, correct.
Well, sunfish, I don't know what a 420 dagger board has, but a sunfish is 2 feet each.
I think it's the same depth as a paddleboard paddle.
Is that what a paddleboard paddle is?
Paddleboard paddle, I can get mine down to 6 feet if I want to.
Paddleboard
This
paddle.
is a balance. They
Yeah.
should be in the boat to have some access to the water, but there's a serious concern about shellfish habitat.
Is there any concern about length of a vessel or draft of a vessel? Or does that complicate things?
No, I think Doug was saying, and Jeff was saying, a racing sled, something that could be any length really, but doesn't draw much. I don't know.
Draft would be the biggest concern, right, I presume?
So what?
The draft would be the biggest concern?
Yeah.
I mean, could you raft over there and leave it there for, I mean, I don't know. Do we talk about size? Raft. I don't know.
We're putting the owner, to the extent this has any teeth in it, in a pretty fair box.
A box.
Will moorings be allowed off the property?
No.
That's in the harbor
No.
management area.
No.
Well,
No.
That's in our rules now.
This is it.
We made that clear when we did the tour, that, you can build it all extension out off this property, but there's no moorings for you to be using a dinghy to get.
How do you prevent a guest vessel from showing up unannounced?
No, you're right, Eric. I hope the harbor master is there with a whistle.
There's going to be no enforcement.
Yeah.
I think my sense is what we proposed here, that I take the depth issue and the length issue, but we want DEEP to embrace what we do here, and I just feel like if we start trying to...
But this doesn't prevent a guest vessel, this is talking about berthing something, not, a boat right now could go over the area if the tide is there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This is just talking about berthing.
Yeah.
Correct.
If he wants to do a flyby and drop something
Correct.
off, he can enforce it.
Correct.
That's a good question, the definition of the word berthing, meaning if I go and leave my boat in Fairfield and then decide it's not berthed there, but I bring it over for the day or for the weekend, is berth a defined maritime term for DEEP's purposes? I don't know as I'm driving.
Is berth moored or otherwise secured?
It just,
Otherwise, okay, so you've got the otherwise secured, okay.
Berth, moored, or otherwise secured.
That's not in the, oh, yeah, it is. Yeah.
How is it?
Berth moored.
So you've taken care of the scenario where someone just shows up with a boat.
Yeah, theoretically, you can't do
Berth
it,
it is
according to this.
Leave it, right.
unattended.
That's to do with the curve.
I don't know how you
Yeah,
board
well, actually,
with float anyway, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
A
but,
berthing.
yeah. So why don't we take this language and present it to the Shellfish Commission and the Conservation Department, see what they have to say. But are we agreed that we're agreed, I guess, that that's we think this is, what we've talked about is better than what they proposed.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
If they're interested in bringing a small sailboat the same way they would bring a kayak, fine.
yeah, yeah. And when Chris Russo was here a couple months ago, he said, he said, I used to sail a 420 at Pequot, and I was thinking I can't sail my 420 under there with this language, but that's, I think, why they proposed this, but, you know, who knows?
No, they were trying to get a
Well,
floater.
they were trying to, yeah, but anyway, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. So I have one more item under new business, unless we have other comments. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut off that conversation. Okay, I just wanted to remind commissioners that, this is the finance season, and, we proposed a no increase budget, to the first select woman in December, and we did not have to appear before the first select woman to, as did many other agencies and groups in town, to justify our expenditures or discuss our budget. And just a couple days ago, I got word from Jen Carpenter that we also do not have to appear before the RTM. Just to remind everybody that our budget is $23,000 roughly. It's been $23,000 appropriated from the RTM for 3 years. This will be the third year, if not the fourth year. That budget goes to pay Betty, Jeff, Brian, copying fees. The harbor master does an educational thing with online mooring and has expenses. We pay those expenses, but that's $23,000, no increase. That's where we are in terms of money that we get from the town. Our mooring fee account, which is the 102 account that we talk about a lot, is significantly larger. It is not subject to anybody else's, nobody else has access to that except us, and nothing gets spent from that except for some of Jeff's bills that have to do with harbor issues. Other than that money has been sitting there and growing there since 1995, when the plan was adopted by the town, and our mooring contractor reminded us several months ago that the cost of the mooring tackle, replacing that, labor and materials, which we own, is about $153,000. So we are in good shape.
I've also paid some of Race's invoices, the small invoices from the 102 account.
Race's invoices get paid from the 102 account, but they will become part of our cost share for any grants that we get from the Connecticut Port Authority. So hopefully, we're building on that.
And the revenue is generated from the mooring fees.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. From the mooring.
The expenses.
Kim, just,
Yeah.
excuse my ignorance, I don't know what the balance is in the mooring fee account that you're speaking of.
It's about $260,000.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, any questions about finance?
What's been the growth of that account?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I've not paid.
It's a nice little, so again, it just continues in case we need it for.
Well, I suspect that when we get funding when and if we get funding, a grant for work at the Lower Wharf, if there's cost share involved, we're already starting to spend for that cost share, and we will have to contribute, probably not the whole amount of the cost share, but some amount of the cost share.
Sure.
The plan update expenses that we've incurred, mostly at this point Jeff's time, but there will be some reproduction, copying costs, that kind of thing, that comes from a separate account that we have, we got from the Connecticut Port Authority to upgrade the plan. So that's yet another account.
And do you remember we had a figure that you needed to keep X amount of dollars in place, for anticipated mooring replacement?
Correct, and that was $153,000 for the cost of replacing all of the moorings in Southport Harbor, which we own, and that money, I think that amount of money is really kind of sacred, that we need to have that
Right.
there at all times, regardless of anything else. So, but just, I mean, we don't talk a lot about money in here, but I just wanted you to be aware that many other agencies and commissions are appearing before the RTM this month and justifying their budgets, and we have luckily been excused from that exercise, and we have maintained, the $23,000 limit on our expenses pretty much for the last 3 years. So I'm sure there'll come a time when we have to increase some of those costs and then appear before the RTM. But for the moment, for another year, we're good. So, any questions? Any new business? Any public comment?
Yes, Madam Chairman, if I may, please.
Please, Pat.
With respect to the release prepared by Don,
Yes.
I commend the commission and I commend Don for making this type of information available. I think it's very appropriate. I think it's timely. I don't get out as much as I used to, but I get a lot of phone calls, and one of the most questions that I'm asked is what's going on at the Lower Wharf. So now we're going to know.
Good.
And secondly, with due respect to Eric, and I think it was he who, and I hate to mention 100 years again, but in my 100 years, I've never heard anyone say there was no fishing at Perry Green. So I'm going to check the deed again. And Eric, you may be right. And if you are, I'll make a motion that be removed from the deed, that fishing is allowed at Perry Green. Hey, thanks much, folks. It was a great meeting.
Thanks, Pat. Anyone else with public comment? Well, it's 6:25. We need a motion to adjourn, or we've got Bill and Jack. All in favor?
Aye.
Great meeting,
Aye.
folks.